What kind of man dares to challenge the Creator? Imagine a figure so bold that his name alone would echo through millennia. This is Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord, whose defiance would reshape human history. For the first time, we'll uncover the hidden connections between this ancient biblical account and archaeological discoveries that confirm its historical significance. This isn't just another retelling. It's a revelation of power, ambition, and consequences that still resonates today. Drawing from ancient Hebrew texts, archaeological findings, and scholarly interpretations, this analysis brings to light the fascinating truth behind one of history's most misunderstood figures. What we've discovered will challenge everything you thought you knew about this pivotal moment in human history. By the end of this journey, you will understand the true story behind humanity's first empire builder. How this ancient tale perfectly mirrors modern power dynamics. Timeless lessons about leadership that apply to your life today. Why the Tower of Babel remains relevant in our age of technological ambition. Let's step back into the aftermath of the Great Flood, where our story begins with a man who dared to dream of touching the heavens. Part 1. Nimrod's Origins and Rise to Power. In the shadow of the Great Flood, when humanity was still finding its footing on cleansed earth, a figure emerged whose ambition would challenge the very heavens. Genesis tells us of Nimrod, born into the lineage of Ham, Noah's son, a birth that carried both promise and shadow. The story begins with a moment of shame. In the aftermath of the flood, Noah, having planted a vineyard, became drunk on wine and lay uncovered in his tent. Ham, Nimrod's grandfather, discovered his father's nakedness. Instead of showing respect and discretion, Ham mocked his father and spread word to his brothers. This act of disrespect would cast a long shadow over Ham's lineage, as Noah, upon awakening, pronounced a curse not on Ham directly, but on Ham's son Canaan. Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants shall he be unto his brethren. Genesis 9:25. It was into this legacy of tension and disgrace that Nimrod was born, grandson of Ham through his father Cush. But rather than accept the weight of his grandfather's shame, Nimrod seemed determined to forge a different path. His very name, meaning "we shall rebel," foreshadowed the defiance that would define his life. As Nimrod grew, he distinguished himself not through quiet acceptance of his family's status, but through extraordinary skill as a hunter. The biblical text describes him as a mighty hunter before the Lord, Genesis 10:9, a phrase laden with both admiration and warning. In the post-flood world, where wild beasts roamed unchecked and threatened the survival of rebuilding communities, Nimrod's hunting prowess made him invaluable. He became known not just for killing animals, but for protecting people, building a reputation as a guardian and leader. But Nimrod's ambitions stretched far beyond the hunt. In a world still largely nomadic, he began to envision something unprecedented: permanent settlements, organized under central authority. The biblical account tells us he established his kingdom first in Babel, then expanded to include Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar, Genesis 10:10. These weren't mere camps or temporary settlements, they were the foundations of civilization itself. Archaeological evidence from ancient Mesopotamia reveals the magnitude of what Nimrod achieved. The cities he established became centers of trade, culture, and power. Babel, later known as Babylon, would become one of the most magnificent cities of the ancient world. Erech, identified with the ancient city of Uruk, was home to some of humanity's earliest written records. Akkad would give its name to an empire and a language that would influence the region for millennia. What made Nimrod's rise particularly remarkable was its timing. The world was still recovering from the catastrophic flood, and God's command to Noah's descendants had been clear: "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Genesis 9:01. But Nimrod had a different vision. Instead of spreading out, he gathered people together. Instead of humble stewardship, he pursued dominion. The transition from hunter to ruler was seamless. The same qualities that made him a successful hunter, strength, strategy, leadership, served him well in building his kingdom. People naturally gravitated toward his protection and vision. In a world still haunted by memories of the flood, Nimrod offered something powerful: security through human achievement rather than divine providence. His influence grew until he became the first person in biblical record to be called a mighty one on the earth, Genesis 10:8. This was more than a description, it was a transformation. Nimrod had risen from the cursed lineage of Ham to become the founder of the first post-flood empire, a feat that would set the stage for one of humanity's most audacious challenges to divine authority. Nimrod's rise represents more than just a success story. It demonstrates how leadership, when divorced from divine guidance, can transform from protection to ambition, from service to self-aggrandizement. His journey from skilled hunter to empire builder reveals the thin line between legitimate authority and rebellious pride. But Nimrod's greatest test of power and pride was yet to come. As his influence grew and his kingdom expanded, he would conceive of a project so ambitious it would forever change the course of human history: the Tower of Babel. Here, in the heart of his empire, Nimrod would attempt to build a structure that would reach the very heavens, setting the stage for a direct confrontation between human ambition and divine authority. Part 2. The First Empire Builder, Nimrod's Rise to Glory. In the shadow of the Great Flood, as humanity was still finding its footing in a world washed clean, there emerged a figure whose ambition would forever change the course of human history. Nimrod, the great-grandson of Noah through Ham and Cush, rose from being a skilled hunter to become humanity's first empire builder, establishing a kingdom that would lay the foundation for civilization itself. The Genesis account tells us that Nimrod began his ascent in the fertile plains of Shinar, modern-day Mesopotamia, but this was no ordinary rise to power. As a mighty hunter before the Lord, Genesis 10:9, Nimrod's reputation was built on more than just his ability to track game. In the dangerous post-flood world where wild beasts threatened the survival of scattered human settlements, Nimrod's prowess as a hunter made him a protector of the people. Picture the scene: settlements of people, still vulnerable and finding their way in this new world, living in constant fear of predators. Into this uncertainty steps Nimrod, a man of extraordinary skill and courage. His hunting expeditions became legendary, not just for providing food, but for establishing safe zones where communities could thrive. The Hebrew phrase, "mighty hunter before the Lord," carries a weight of significance. It suggests that even God took notice of his exceptional abilities. But Nimrod's true genius lay in how he transformed this initial reputation into something far more significant. Archaeological evidence from ancient Mesopotamia reveals a pattern that aligns perfectly with the biblical account. In the fertile valleys between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Nimrod began to establish the world's first network of cities. The first centers of his kingdom were Babylon, Uruk, Akkad, and Calneh in Shinar, Genesis 10:10. Each of these cities tells a story of revolutionary innovation. Babylon, with its hanging gardens and massive walls, would become one of the wonders of the ancient world. Uruk, with its sophisticated irrigation systems, transformed agriculture forever. Akkad introduced the world's first postal system and standardized weights and measures. These weren't just settlements. They were the birthplace of civilization as we know it. Nimrod's genius lay in understanding that true power came not just from physical prowess, but from organization and infrastructure. He created the first systems of centralized government, established trade routes between his cities, and implemented laws that would influence legal codes for millennia to come. The archaeological record shows evidence of standardized brick sizes, organized labor forces, and complex administrative systems, all pointing to a level of sophistication that was unprecedented in human history. But perhaps most remarkably, Nimrod achieved something that had never been done before. He united people under a single vision. In a world still marked by tribal divisions and scattered settlements, he created the first true empire. The biblical text hints at his exceptional leadership abilities when it says, "He began to be a mighty one on the earth." Genesis 10:10. This wasn't just about physical might. It was about the power to inspire, to organize, and to build. However, as Nimrod's power grew, so did his ambition. The very success of his empire-building efforts led to a fateful decision that would eventually become his downfall. The stage was set for his greatest and most controversial project, the Tower of Babel. As his kingdom expanded and his fame spread, Nimrod stood at the height of his power, surveying the vast empire he had built from nothing. But in his heart, a dangerous seed had taken root. No longer content with earthly achievements, he began to dream of something that would truly touch the heavens, a project that would challenge the very authority of God. Nimrod's rise to power represents a crucial turning point in human history. His achievements demonstrate humanity's incredible potential for innovation and organization, while his eventual overreach serves as a timeless warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition. The archaeological evidence of his cities, many of which still exist in ruins today, confirms the biblical account of his extraordinary impact on human civilization. As we turn our attention to the Tower of Babel, we'll see how Nimrod's greatest ambition would lead to one of history's most dramatic confrontations between human pride and divine authority. The story that unfolds would not only change the course of his empire, but would reshape the very fabric of human society itself. Part 3. The Tower of Babel Project, Humanity's Greatest Ambition. In the fertile plains of Shinar, where the morning sun cast long shadows across the ancient landscape, humanity's most audacious project was about to unfold. The world was still young, generations removed from the Great Flood, and mankind had begun to flourish once again. Under Nimrod's charismatic leadership, people had gathered in unprecedented numbers, united by a common language and an extraordinary vision. Picture the scene. Thousands of workers bustling across the construction site, the air filled with the sounds of hammers striking stone and voices calling out in perfect understanding. This was no ordinary building project. It was humanity's first attempt to reach the heavens. The biblical account tells us they said to each other, "Come, let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves and not be scattered over the face of the whole earth." Genesis 11 verse 4. The technology they employed was revolutionary for its time. They used brick instead of stone and tar for mortar. Genesis 11:03. This detail, seemingly minor, reveals something extraordinary about human innovation. In a region where stone was scarce, they learned to bake clay into bricks, creating building materials stronger than natural rock. Archaeological evidence from ancient Mesopotamia confirms this technological leap, with the discovery of similar construction techniques in the ruins of ancient ziggurats. But what drove them to such ambitious heights? The answer lies in the complex psychology of the post-flood world. The memory of the devastating flood still lingered in their collective consciousness. Some scholars suggest the tower was partly born from fear. Fear of another flood, fear of divine punishment, fear of being scattered. Under Nimrod's leadership, they sought to create something permanent, indestructible, a monument to human achievement that would stand as a defiance against the very heavens. The tower rose day by day, its shadow growing longer across the plain. Traditional interpretations suggest it may have been a ziggurat, a stepped pyramid similar to those found throughout ancient Mesopotamia. These massive structures, some reaching heights of over 300 feet, were seen as bridges between earth and heaven. But the Tower of Babel was different. It wasn't built to worship God, but to challenge him. The scene at the construction site would have been breathtaking. Imagine the coordination required. Thousands of workers moving in harmony, each understanding the other perfectly, their shared language enabling unprecedented cooperation. The tower rose higher than anything humanity had ever built, each level a testament to. But as the structure reached toward the clouds, something remarkable happened. God himself took notice. The biblical account tells us, the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. Genesis chapter 11 verse 5. There's divine irony in this statement. The tower they thought reached to the heavens was so insignificant that God had to come down to see it. The climax of the story arrives with dramatic intensity. Just as the builders were reaching the height of their ambition, God intervened. If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Genesis 11:6. This divine observation reveals both the potential and the danger of unified human ambition. The consequences were swift and profound. God confused their languages, making it impossible for the workers to understand each other. Imagine the chaos that ensued. Foremen giving orders that nobody could understand, workers unable to coordinate their efforts, the once unified project dissolving into confusion and frustration. The tower, humanity's greatest ambition, was left unfinished, a monument to pride and its consequences. But the story of the Tower of Babel isn't just about a failed construction project. Its aftermath would reshape human society in ways that continue to affect us today. As we examine the consequences of this divine intervention, we'll discover how this ancient event laid the foundation for the diverse world we know today. Part 4. The Divine Intervention at Babel, a turning point in human history. The construction of the Tower of Babel, with its audacious aim of reaching the heavens, did not go unnoticed by the Creator. In Genesis 11:05, we find a moment of profound irony. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower the people were building. Think about that for a moment. The tower that humanity believed would reach the heavens was so insignificant that God had to come down to inspect it. This single verse captures both divine authority and human hubris in a way that resonates through the ages. Picture the scene. Babel, a bustling metropolis in the fertile plains of Shinar. The air fills with the sounds of construction, thousands of workers crafting bricks, architects calling out measurements, and the steady rhythm of building. At its center rises an ambitious structure, reaching ever higher into the sky. The people work with unprecedented unity, all speaking one language, their hearts set on a single purpose. But their unity, rather than celebrating divine glory, serves to challenge it. God's observation of this scene reveals something profound about human nature. If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, he declares, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Genesis 11:6. This statement isn't one of fear or threat, but rather a recognition of humanity's potential for collective pride and defiance. The Tower Project represented more than architectural ambition. It was a declaration of independence from divine authority. The intervention that followed was both decisive and merciful. Instead of destroying the tower or punishing the people directly, God chose to confuse their languages. Imagine the scene as it unfolded. One moment, the construction site operates with seamless efficiency. The next, chaos erupts, as workers suddenly find themselves unable to understand each other. A foreman calls for more bricks, but his workers hear incomprehensible sounds. Architects try to communicate crucial measurements, but their words make no sense to their colleagues. This confusion of languages was more than a mere inconvenience, it was a fundamental disruption of human unity. The text tells us, "So the Lord scattered them from there over all the earth, and they stopped building the city." Genesis 11:8. The once mighty project ground to a halt, not through violence or destruction, but through the simple inability to communicate. The archaeological record adds fascinating context to this biblical account. Throughout Mesopotamia, archaeologists have discovered numerous ziggurats, massive stepped towers that ancient peoples built to reach toward their gods. These structures stand as silent witnesses to humanity's age-old desire to ascend to the heavens through their own efforts. The consequences of this divine intervention were far-reaching and continue to echo through history. The scattering of people led to the formation of distinct nations, cultures, and languages. What began as a project of human pride became the catalyst for the rich diversity we see in our world today. This diversity, while born from judgment, reveals God's ability to bring blessing even through correction. Consider the theological significance. At Babel, human pride led to division, but this wasn't the end of the story. Centuries later, at Pentecost, Acts 2, we see a beautiful reversal. The Holy Spirit enables people from every nation to understand the gospel in their own language, demonstrating that true unity comes not through human ambition, but through divine grace. The dramatic tension reaches its peak as we witness the ultimate futility of human attempts to establish greatness apart from God. The unfinished tower stands as a monument to pride's limitations, while the scattered peoples demonstrate the inescapable reality of divine sovereignty. What humanity intended as a statement of independence became instead a testimony to their dependence on God. But the story of Babel doesn't end with scattered peoples and an abandoned tower. Its implications would ripple through history, shaping the development of civilizations and offering timeless lessons about power, pride, and divine purpose. As we'll see in our next segment, these lessons remain remarkably relevant to our modern world, where humanity continues to grapple with questions of unity, ambition, and the proper use of power. Part 5. The Legacy of Babel, a tale that echoes through time. In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carved life into the fertile plains, stood a monument to human ambition that would forever change the course of history. The Tower of Babel, reaching toward the heavens like a defiant finger pointed at the divine, represented more than mere architecture. It embodied humanity's first unified attempt to challenge God's authority. The story begins with Nimrod, whose name itself means, "we shall rebel." As a great-grandson of Noah, he emerged in a world still bearing the fresh scars of the Great Flood. The biblical account tells us that God had given humanity a clear mandate: be fruitful and increase in number and fill the earth, Genesis 9:1. Yet Nimrod, described as a mighty hunter before the Lord, Genesis 10:9, had grander ambitions. In the land of Shinar, Nimrod built not just cities, but the foundations of human civilization itself. Under his leadership, people developed revolutionary building techniques, using bricks instead of stone and tar for mortar. This technological leap allowed them to dream bigger than ever before. "Come," they said, "let us build ourselves a city with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves." Genesis 11:04. The implications of this project were profound. The Tower of Babel wasn't merely a construction project. It was humanity's first united declaration of independence from divine authority. Archaeological evidence suggests that this tower was likely a ziggurat, a stepped pyramid that ancient Mesopotamians believed could bridge the gap between earth and heaven. Each brick laid was a statement of defiance. Each level completed a step closer to their ambitious goal. But the true legacy of Babel extends far beyond its physical ruins. The divine intervention that followed, the confusion of languages and scattering of peoples, set in motion patterns that would shape human history for millennia to come. This moment marked the birth of cultural diversity, the emergence of distinct civilizations, and the beginning of humanity's long struggle with questions of unity versus diversity. Fast forward to today, and the echoes of Babel resonate more powerfully than ever. In our modern world, we see striking parallels. Consider Silicon Valley's tech giants building their own modern towers of digital Babel. Like Nimrod's ambitious project, they too seek to unite humanity under single platforms, single languages of code, single virtual spaces. The parallels are uncanny, from the shared ambition to make a name for ourselves to the potential consequences of consolidated power. The story of Babel finds its mirror in every skyscraper that pierces the clouds, in every attempt to create universal languages like Esperanto, and in every global organization that seeks to unite humanity under a single banner. Yet, perhaps most profoundly, it's reflected in our ongoing struggle with the very same questions that faced Nimrod's generation. How do we balance progress with humility, unity with diversity, human ambition with divine wisdom? But here's the most striking revelation. The legacy of Babel isn't just about failure and punishment. In a masterful twist of divine irony, what appeared to be a setback, the confusion of languages and scattering of peoples, actually fulfilled God's original command to fill the earth. What's more, this diversity would eventually serve a greater purpose. At Pentecost, Acts 2, the miracle of speaking in tongues demonstrated how true unity could be achieved not through human ambition, but through divine grace. This complex legacy teaches us that progress without wisdom leads to peril, that unity without respect for diversity becomes tyranny, and that the greatest achievements come not from defying divine authority, but from working in harmony with it. The story of Babel reminds us that true greatness lies not in the height of our towers, but in the depth of our understanding. As we look at our modern world with its soaring ambitions and technological marvels, the question remains, are we building towers of pride or bridges of understanding? The answer may well determine the legacy we leave for future generations. Let's explore how these ancient lessons can guide us through our contemporary challenges. Part 6. The Modern Legacy of Nimrod's Ambition. In the gleaming towers of Manhattan's financial district, a story from antiquity finds striking parallels. As the morning sun reflects off glass and steel structures that seem to pierce the clouds, we're reminded of another tower, built millennia ago, that also sought to touch the heavens. The story of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel doesn't just echo through history, it screams across time with remarkable relevance to our modern world. Consider this scene. On the fertile plains of Shinar, Nimrod stood before his people, his voice carrying across the crowd as he unveiled his vision for the greatest architectural achievement in human history. Let us build ourselves a city, the biblical account tells us, with a tower that reaches to the heavens, so that we may make a name for our... These words, spoken over 4,000 years ago, could easily be mistaken for a modern corporate mission statement or a tech entrepreneur's ambitious pitch. The parallel becomes even more striking when we examine today's technological landscape. In Silicon Valley, modern-day Nimrods pursue artificial intelligence and space exploration with the same fervor that drove the ancient builder to reach for the stars. Like Nimrod, they gather the brightest minds, pooling resources and talent to push the boundaries of human achievement. The languages they speak aren't Akkadian or ancient Sumerian, but Python, Java, and C++. Yet the fundamental ambition remains unchanged, the desire to transcend human limitations, to touch the divine. But the story takes an even more fascinating turn when we look at contemporary corporate structures. Nimrod's kingdom, centered in Babel, was the world's first recorded attempt at a multinational empire. He established a network of cities, Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh, creating what we might today call a corporate conglomerate. The archaeological evidence suggests these cities were connected through trade routes and shared cultural practices, much like today's global corporations with their interconnected offices and unified corporate cultures. The biblical narrative tells us that God observed humanity's unity in this endeavor. If, as one people speaking the same language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. Today we witness similar concerns about the consolidation of power in big tech companies and global conglomerates. The one language of our time might be the universal code of digital technology, binding humanity together in ways Nimrod could only have dreamed of. But here's where the story reaches its crescendo. Just as God intervened at Babel, confusing the languages and scattering the people, we're seeing modern empires face their own forms of disruption. Antitrust legislation, privacy concerns, and technological backlash mirror the ancient dispersal. The tower's destruction wasn't just about stopping construction. It was about preventing the dangerous concentration of human power and pride. The archaeological evidence adds another layer of intrigue. Recent discoveries in Mesopotamia have unearthed the remains of ancient ziggurats, massive stepped towers that likely inspired the biblical account. These structures, like our modern skyscrapers, served as both functional buildings and symbols of power. They were statements of human achievement, visible for miles across the ancient landscape, just as today's corporate headquarters dominate our urban skylines. What makes this story particularly relevant is its warning about the cyclical nature of human ambition. Nimrod's desire to make a name for ourselves reflects a fundamentally human aspiration that transcends time. We see it in the race to build the world's tallest building, in the competition to develop the most advanced AI, and in the quest to be the first to colonize Mars. Each generation has its own Tower of Babel, its own expression of the eternal human desire to reach beyond our limitations. The story reaches its powerful conclusion with a timeless truth. Human achievement, when divorced from humility and divine purpose, carries the seeds of its own destruction. The Tower of Babel didn't fall because it lacked engineering sophistication or resources. It fell because its purpose was rooted in pride rather than service to a higher purpose. This ancient narrative provides a crucial framework for understanding our modern challenges with power, technology, and human ambition. It suggests that true progress isn't measured by the height of our towers, whether physical or digital, but by the wisdom with which we build them. As we look ahead to an era of unprecedented technological advancement and global connectivity, the story of Nimrod and his tower serves as both a warning and a guide. It challenges us to question not just what we can build, but why we build it. Our age, like Nimrod, stands at a crucial crossroads between ambition and wisdom, between progress and purpose. The choices we make today will echo through history, just as Nimrod's choice continues to resonate in our time. The legacy that echoes through time. As we conclude our journey through the remarkable story of Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, we find ourselves facing timeless truths that resonate powerfully in our modern world. This ancient narrative reveals fundamental lessons about power, ambition, and the delicate balance between human achievement and divine purpose. Remember how Nimrod rose from a skilled hunter to become humanity's first empire builder? How his ambition led to the construction of the greatest architectural marvel of his time, and how his pursuit of power ultimately led to one of history's most dramatic divine interventions? In each chapter of his story, we find mirrors of our own struggles with power, technology, and pride. The lessons are clear and striking. First, true greatness lies not in the height of our towers, but in the depth of our purpose. Second, unity without humility leads to destruction. And third, perhaps most importantly, human achievement finds its fullest expression not in defiance of divine authority, but in harmony with it. But here's the challenging question that confronts each of us. What towers are we building in our own lives? Are we, like Nimrod, pursuing achievement for its own sake? Or are we building something that serves a greater purpose? Your answer to this question could reshape your understanding of success, power, and purpose. This story isn't just history, it's a living challenge to our generation. As we stand at the crossroads of unprecedented technological advancement and human ambition, Nimrod's story calls us to examine our motives, question our ambitions, and consider the true purpose of our achievements. I invite you to join this crucial conversation. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What modern towers do you see being built today? How do you balance ambition with humility in your own life? Your perspective could help others understand this ancient wisdom in a new light. If this exploration of Nimrod's story has challenged your thinking or opened new perspectives, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. By joining our community, you'll be part of ongoing discussions that bridge ancient wisdom with modern challenges. Hit the notification bell to ensure you don't miss our next deep dive into the stories that shape our understanding of power, purpose, and divine wisdom. Remember, every great tower starts with a single stone. The question isn't whether you'll build, it's what you'll build and why. Your story, like Nimrod's, is part of a greater narrative. Make it one of wisdom, purpose, and lasting significance. Thank you for joining me on this journey through one of history's most compelling narratives. Until next time, stay curious, stay humble, and keep building with purpose. Let us take a moment to reflect and pray together. Don't forget to share this video with someone who might need this message today. Together, we can build understanding that reaches higher than any tower ever could. This story doesn't end here. It continues with you. What will you build? How will you choose to make your mark on history? The answers to these questions begin with the choices you make today.